Yo, what is up, everybody? It's Jay. Welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we got another what if battle scenario by the great Swagkage. And as you can tell by the title, it is Obito Uchiha versus Hashirama Senju. Now, on one side, we got Obito Uchiha, one of my very favorite characters, one of the most complex characters in the whole Naruto verse, and one of the two biggest villains in the Fourth Great Ninja War, with the other being Madara, of course, who was a quite powerful shinobi, I might add. On the other side, we got the first Hokage, which I did another video on today of him facing someone else. Check that one out as well. The first Hokage, the founder of the Leaf, and a god of shinobi of his time, the most powerful shinobi of his time period. So they're gonna clash, and this is very interesting because there's many versions of Obito, and they all stack up differently against Hashirama Senju. So obviously, I'm sure Swag is going to discuss those. I'm very interested to see what he has to say. But before I begin, any love is greatly appreciated. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications. David do yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy, maybe your first time here and you mess with the kid, hit that sub button, man, because once you do, you're part of the family forever. And I love you all for this growing support and love. But let's get straight to the video here. Screen. Get straight to it. Let's see what Swag has to say.
How's it going, everyone? Swagkage here, and today we're going to be talking about Obito versus Hashirama. Normally, I take a look at multiple versions of both characters when I do a versus battle like this. I pit the most appropriate forms of each one against one another, see who comes out on top in each scenario, but I don't feel like doing that here because there are a lot of forms of Obito, and there are a handful of different Hashiramas, and not too many of them are relevant here. The ones I mainly want to focus on are Rinnegan Obito and Prime Alive Hashirama, though I may mention a couple of other versions of both characters throughout different points.
That's fair enough.
I'll go ahead and say right now that unless we're talking about the really heavily nerfed Hashirama that Orochimaru brought back to fight Hiruzen, most versions of Obito don't have a chance against him. I mean, obviously, Kid Obito is he's completely irrelevant here, but the yellow mask Obito that fought Minato and the orange mask Obito that we see throughout the first half of Shippuden, neither of them would perform too well against Hashirama. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Hashirama stomps both of them without question. The only super relevant forms of Obito are, like I said, Rinnegan Obito and Jubito to some extent, but I'll get into that later. Now, Obito has a very diverse arsenal, and he has access to a lot of tools that would give many of his potential opponents a lot of trouble. But unfortunately for him, Hashirama is extremely well equipped to deal with anything that Obito could throw at him. Let's start with Kamui, because that's the core of Obito's fighting style.
The X Factor.
So as I tend to, I tweeted out the thumbnail for this video a little bit ago, and immediately everybody responded by saying, oh, what's Hashirama gonna do against Kamui? Obito can't be
like I said, the X
Obito's
Factor,
intangible. If Obito can't take damage, how is he supposed to lose? And I imagine that given the fact that I have a reputation for giving Uchiha the benefit of the doubt in versus battles like these, many of you are under the impression that I think the exact same thing, but I don't. Kamui has a massive weakness, and it is shown time and time again throughout the manga every time Obito fights, and that is that he cannot remain intangible and damage his opponents at the same time. Let me provide an example of this weakness being exploited. During the fight against Naruto and B, Obito explains that all he has to do is touch Naruto once, and then he practically wins the fight. Almost immediately after this, he gets Naruto right where he wants him, places his palm flat on his face, then at the last second, Guy shows up, attempts to hit Obito with a really hard leaf hurricane or whatever, and it forces Obito to use Kamui to avoid getting hit. Now, this is a pretty big problem for him because it's not like he can win a fight against Hashirama by just using Kamui forever. I mean, yes, it will keep Hashirama from damaging him, but it'll also keep him from damaging Hashirama. I'm also pretty sure that even if it's minimal, Kamui does have a chakra cost. Not to mention, it can only be used for a maximum of 5 minutes consecutively, so it's not like he's gonna be able to do it forever anyway. And on the subject of chakra, there's no way that Obito has more than Hashirama. It's just impossible. No Hashirama's chakra supply has been compared to that of Naruto's, which is already massive on its own, combined with that of 1/2 of Kurama's. He's been shown spamming attacks that are enormous in scale, like with no hesitation at all. It's practically like he doesn't even have a limited chakra supply in the first place. The guy fought against Madara for 24 hours straight, still had enough chakra left to create a wood clone for a diversion, stabbed Madara in the back and won. This is all to say that no matter how long Obito attempts to remain on the defensive, Hashirama will be able to outlast him, and Obito will eventually be forced to at least attempt to attack him. This will expose the weakness of Kamui, but the question is whether or not Hashirama Hashirama will be able to capitalize on this. I believe he could for a couple of different reasons. The first and most important is that there's not a lot in Obito's arsenal that can actually seriously damage or kill Hashirama. The guy's really durable, and he can also heal from many of the injuries he sustains, so Obito's only real shot at actually killing him is going to be through using some kind of one-shot hacks ability like Kamui or the Human Path. Now, you may think I've gotten a bit off topic here, but the main reason I brought this up is because both of those abilities will leave Obito exposed for at least a couple seconds. The Human Path's ability to extract its target's soul requires physical contact to be established for a little while, and if he attempts to suck Hashirama into the Kamui dimension, that'll also keep him from becoming intangible for a similar period of time. Even though the openings only last a few seconds, I'm pretty confident that Hashirama would be able to land a hit or two during these intervals. And it's not like Obito can change his approach after taking damage because of this. Like I said, these are two of the only ways he can realistically kill Hashirama. Something else worth mentioning is Hashirama's ability to create wood clones, and considering his gargantuan chakra supply, I doubt there's any relevant limit to how many he can put out. This is super important because, barring some filler scenes in the anime, it's been pretty consistent throughout the manga that it's impossible for anyone, regardless of whether or not they have any dojutsu to help them, to distinguish a clone apart from its creator. Even Obito specifically is shown surprised by the idea that the Naruto he was just fighting may have been a shadow clone. So if anybody tries to say, oh, you know, Obito, he's an exception, he should definitely be able to tell Hashirama apart from his clones, I mean, it's clearly shown here that he wouldn't be able to do that. Even discounting that, Madara has also flat out said he's the only person who's ever been able to tell Hashirama apart from his clones. So hopefully everybody can agree on this. Now that makes the issue that I just talked about concerning Obito's inability to remain intangible while attempting to kill Hashirama way worse. This is really bad for two reasons in particular. The first being that since he can't tell which is which, he won't know who to approach with his Human Path or suck you into the Kamui dimension strategy. And the second being that if he does happen to corner Hashirama's real body and ends up being on the verge of either ripping out his soul or sucking him into the Kamui dimension, as soon as his body rematerializes, one of Hashirama's clones can come in and damage it. Even on the off chance that Obito does successfully trap Hashirama's real body in the Kamui dimension, if he created any wood clones up to that point, it doesn't really matter because at best Obito's gonna get away from the fight with a tie. He'd still have all of those really powerful wood clones on the outside to deal with, and he wouldn't be able to rely on Kamui since he sucked the real Hashirama into the dimension, and whenever he attempts to phase through one of the clones' attacks, Hashirama will be able to damage his body from inside of the dimension. The outcome of Obito versus Hashirama's wood clones under these circumstances would be one of two things. Either Obito would die and Hashirama would just be stuck there forever, or Obito would realize that he can't keep fighting this way without facing a massive risk of death, and he would intentionally eject Hashirama from the dimension himself. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet that many of you may be waiting for me to talk about is Obito's ability to control 6 Biju at once in this fight. And against most opponents, that would be a pretty big deal, and you'd be right to be mad at me for ignoring it for so long. However, Obito's opponent here is Hashirama, and Hashirama should be able to deal with the Biju without any problems at all.
Right,
he
of
fought
all
against a perfect
beasts.
Susanoo-cloaked, full-powered Ninetales and still won. Meanwhile, as many of you may remember, Naruto, who, without taking the Ninetales into consideration, should be much weaker than EMS Madara, with one half of the Nine-Tailed Fox's chakra, was able to deal with 5 of Obito's Biju at the same time with enough chakra left over to engage in a fight with Obito himself and Madara also at the same time. Given this information, I just cannot, in good faith, argue in favor of the Biju. Hashirama should be able to deal with them as though they weren't even a problem in the first place. As a matter of fact, Obito might actually want to retract them back into the Ghetto Mazo to keep them from running away from him after Hashirama inevitably either removes the chakra rods from them or eliminates Obito's control over them using his wood release jutsu. So after this, the fight would be reduced to what I was talking about earlier, Obito attempting to either remove Hashirama's soul using the Human Path or suck him into the Kamui dimension, and I just don't think he'd be able to do either one of those. I mean, obviously those aren't the only things he's capable of doing. He could obviously use other techniques to set up a scenario where he might be able to take Hashirama out with one of those two, but I can't see it happening because of how much of a monster Hashirama is. Obito would have to deal with multiple wood golems, the giant hands erupting from the ground, the bringer of darkness genjutsu, and last but not least, the Shin Susenju, or the wood release true several thousand hands technique that Hashirama can just drop to practically end the battle at any time. I would say that Obito could use the Rinnegan in creative ways to catch Hashirama by surprise at various points throughout the fight, but Hashirama is apparently familiar with at least one of the Rinnegan's techniques already. Now, just because he recognized the ghetto art of Rinne Rebirth, it doesn't mean he has complete full knowledge on all of the Rinnegan's powers, but it is a possibility worth taking into account, and I think it'd make things even harder for Obito than than they already are. The last possible
Right.
thing that I could think to bring up in Obito's favor is the fact that maybe he's faster because he's fought with Minato before and he fought with KCM Naruto before, and he was able to keep up with both of them. But then again, a weakened Edo Tensei Madara was also shown reacting pretty easily to KCM2 Naruto's attacks, and
Definitely.
Hashirama was never implied to have any trouble keeping up with Madara's speed during their mini fight. So it's a bit tough to argue that Obito's the faster of the two here. Also, Hashirama
that'd
has
be
a
a
bunch
stretch.
of crazy speed feats of his own, like here where he reacts to a tailed beast bomb being fired from really close behind him. This is all without the aid of Sage Mode, by the way. He notices it, turns around, weaves the summoning jutsu hand seals, and successfully summons 5 Rashomon walls to protect himself. And I'm gonna repeat it, this was in base without the aid of Sage Mode. I mean, in
Right.
all honesty, I can't even see Obito beating Edo Hashirama. The guy's just way too powerful, and I can't think of any convincing arguments in Obito's favor. Jubito, on the other hand, completely different story. I won't spend too much time on this.
He beats Hashirama, right?
Like, Hashirama takes one
He
look
admits
at
it and
uncontrolled,
says he himself admits
destabilized,
that
baby mode
Jubito's stronger than
Jubito,
him.
and he
So
goes, that guy's stronger than I am. Full power, like 6 peds Jubito with the truth-seeking orbs and the ability to fly and everything. He'd probably tear Hashirama apart. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair. Hashirama would probably put up a decent fight, but there's absolutely no way he'd be able to take Jubito.
He doesn't-
out. The 6
yeah, he doesn't beat
Rays
Jubito.
formation would come out, and that'd be the end of the fight. I can't think of anything that Hashirama could do to survive that. Maybe I'll make another video in the future about Hashirama versus Jubito, exploring the topic more in depth, but for now I'm just going to leave it at that. Anyway, thanks as
Great video.
always for watching
Very
the video
interesting.
all the way to the end. Make sure to leave your thoughts on both who you think would win and the video in the comments below, and if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like me to cover, include them in your comment as well. Thanks once again, hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and until my next video, I'll talk
That was
to
a
you
great video,
later.
folks.
Swagkage out. Bye.
all right, there you guys have that. That is the end of that video. Now to sum up my thoughts here. Now to go off what Swag said about the 6 tails that were under, Obito's control. If you guys aren't sold on the fact that it wouldn't be a problem for Hashirama, let me tell you this: he was basically the shepherd of of all tailed beasts. So he basically, I believe, he captured them all, and then was so merciful to them that he dispersed them across the nations. So in some way, you could even say, I feel like the tail beasts fear him. They fear him. I mean, Madara obviously, Genjutsu, the 9 tails, put a perfect Susanoo around him, and he still lost to Hashirama. Hashirama defeated him at the end. So even Kurama, to some extent, I'm sure fears Hashirama to some point. They all fear him, so that would not be a problem. It's not even the stronger tailed beast he'd have to deal with. If you had to, if Obito threw the 6 tails at him, he would capture them or just undo the jutsu or the genjutsu or the rods that were in him, and that'd be that. They'd be out of the way. They'd run off. They'd run off, run away. But yeah, the speed factor, like he mentioned, yeah, Obito is not faster than Hashirama. I mean, he was able to as a child, he was able to react to Minato, was competitive with Minato, but Madara was able to keep up with KCM2 Naruto, who was able to keep up, who Hashirama was able to keep up with, excuse me. So Hashirama was able to keep up with Madara. Madara was able to keep up with KCM2 Naruto. So it's very hard to argue that Obito would be faster than Hashirama. Now, Obito was able to keep up with, I believe, KCM 1 Naruto, I believe, when they were fighting, right? So, yeah, that would be a stretch. I wouldn't give that to Obito. You might be able to make the case, but either way, he wouldn't be way faster than Hashirama. It'd be close, and that's concrete. I don't think you can argue he'd be way faster. So, he just doesn't have the power to defeat Hashirama. He'd have to survive and evade. That's the most realistic thing that would probably take place. Obito would probably leave. He would just Kamui himself out of there. So I highly doubt that he'd be able to defeat Hashirama. Obito is more of a defense kind of guy. With the Kamui, he's more of a defensive fighter. Very hard to hit him. Even Hashirama would have a hard time at first, but would easily outlast him, like Swag pointed out. But yeah, there isn't really much to say more than that. This is pretty obvious who would win in most cases. And Jubito, if it was a Jubito version of Obito, then that would be obviously Jubito would win. I mean, Hashirama himself stated, yeah, he's stronger than me. He's stronger than me. and he was bodying all the other Hokages, the second, the fourth, along with Sasuke and Naruto, up until obviously Naruto and Sasuke worked together and defeated him. But before that, he was toying with them. He with relative ease, he was doing work. Hashirama by himself, that would if it was just him against Jubito, it wouldn't be much different. He'd probably beat him with relative ease. Now Hashirama probably would put up a fight. I mean, he has very formidable jutsu and a very formidable arsenal of abilities. Um, but eventually, Jubito is too much. He has the true seeking orbs that can negate all chakra natures and things like that. And yeah, we saw Sage mode. It did damage the true seeking orb shield when Naruto did his, had a jutsu of Sage mode. Sage mode jutsu. So Sage energy, nature energy, was able to kind of not destroy a true seeking orb, but kind of weaken it. Now we all know Hashirama also has that, but yeah, he wouldn't beat him. I mean, if those guys all together couldn't, I highly doubt Hashirama could. But all in all, it's pretty concrete, who would win in what scenario. So to cap it off, Obito with the Renegon loses to Hashirama almost every time. I'm gonna say 9.5 out of 10 times, because I'm gonna say 10 out of 10 times. But it's not impossible for Obito to win. It's damn near impossible though. It's damn near impossible. Yeah, Hashirama would win with mid difficulty max, in my opinion, in almost every scenario, an infinite domain of possibilities. Obito would lose in all of them, basically. There's like the rare occurrence that he'd win. It'd be extremely rare. In the world of Naruto, anything can happen. But in all, in a realistic scenario, Obito loses. In the Jubito case, Jubito versus Hashirama, Jubito wins. It's kind of the flip now. He probably wins every time almost. Hashirama would lose every time. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's impossible for him to win, but basically, damn near impossible. So, yeah, that's my sum up. My analysis of this one. Swag did a great job of kind of just putting the nail in the coffin. We are, putting the nail in the coffin of what we already knew. So he did a good job. So all those casuals out there, we know them that are like, oh, Hashirama is the god of Shinobi, man. He beats them all. No, he doesn't. But he's very powerful. No discredit to Hashirama, but he loses to Jubito. We can all agree with that. But yeah, guys, gonna wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed. I didn't want to pause the video because it was kind of short. I didn't want to pause it, so I just waited for it to end, kind of. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any recommendations, let me know in the comments. But yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap it up. And this is Jay the Great signing out with another video. I love you all, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.